What if the last train of the night wasn't carrying passengers, but something else? What if every missing person from your town boarded the same train? What if the conductor already knew your name before you bought your ticket? The heavy iron doors of Raven Creek Station creaked in the bitter Montana wind as Emma Wilson checked her watch. It was 11:42 p.m. Her breath bloomed in white plumes under the buzzing halogen lights of the deserted platform. She had missed the 10:30 p.m. commuter line back to her university apartment after spending the evening studying at a local diner, and the station felt entirely abandoned. Just as she began to panic about being stranded in the remote mountain town overnight, a low metallic groan echoed from the tracks. A set of dim yellow headlights pierced the thick mountain fog. The train that pulled up to the platform was old, its dark green paint peeling away like dead skin, but the digital display on the front read 11:45 p.m. Relief washed over Emma. She didn't question why this scheduled route wasn't on her transit app. She just wanted to get home. She stepped inside car 3, the heavy door slamming shut behind her with a definitive airlocked thud. The interior was surprisingly clean, though it smelled faintly of ozone and old, damp paper. At first glance, everything felt normal. There were only a few other passengers scattered throughout the long car, each sitting perfectly still, staring straight ahead or out into the pitch-black night. An older man in a faded flannel shirt sat 3 rows up. A woman in a yellow raincoat sat near the back, her head bowed. Emma took a seat near the middle, pulling her laptop bag onto her lap. She pulled out her phone to text her roommate that she was finally on her way. But before she could hit send, the train lurched forward into the dark, rapidly gaining speed as it headed toward the jagged peaks of the Blackwood mountain range. 10 minutes into the ride, the train plunged into the Blackwood Tunnel, a 3-mile stretch of darkness carved straight through the heart of the mountain. Instantly, the bars on Emma's phone dropped to 0. The glowing no-service icon flashed on her screen. Then, the train's overhead lights flickered violently, buzzing like angry hornets before dying completely. For 10 agonizing seconds, Emma was submerged in absolute suffocating darkness. The only sound was the rhythmic, deafening roar of the wheels against the iron tracks. When the lights finally surged back to life with a harsh pop, Emma gasped. The car was half empty. The man in the flannel shirt was gone. The woman in the yellow raincoat was gone. Their belongings were still in their seats, a worn leather thermos and a damp umbrella, but the people themselves had vanished without a sound. Emma stood up, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She spun around, scanning the empty rows. There was no way they could have walked past her down the narrow aisle. Her hands shook as she unlocked her phone to check her GPS, but the blue dot representing her location was spinning erratically, unable to lock onto any satellite. The digital map showed nothing but an endless, featureless black void. Driven by a sudden spiking adrenaline, Emma hurried toward the heavy door leading to car 4. She pushed it open, stepping into the next carriage, hoping to find a ticket collector or at least another living soul. Instead, she found an eerie repetition of the last car, row after row of plush, empty seats. But as she walked further, she noticed a discarded yellowed newspaper sitting on a table in one of the booths. The paper was crisp, unaffected by time, but the date printed at the top made her blood run cold. November 14th, 1996. The front page headline screamed in bold black ink, "Night Train 404 disappears in Blackwood Tunnel, 47 passengers missing." Emma squinted at the grainy black and white photographs of the missing victims printed below the headline. Her breath hitched. There, smiling mechanically at the camera, was the man in the flannel shirt. Right next to his picture was a photo of the woman in the yellow raincoat. They hadn't just vanished when the lights went out. They had been missing for exactly 30 years. Before Emma could process the terror building in her chest, a low, rhythmic clicking sound echoed from the far end of the car. The door, people speaking the exact same words at slightly different intervals. Emma stumbled backward, her heel catching on the carpet. I need to get off. Where's the next stop? My GPS isn't working. The conductor stopped just 3 feet away from her. The air around him dropped drastically in temperature, turning Emma's breath back into white frost. He tilted his head up slightly, and under the shadow of the brim, Emma saw only empty, hollow sockets where his eyes should have been, swimming with a wet, pulsing darkness. "Next stop is Oakhaven Valley, Emma," the conductor whispered, his grin widening until the skin at the corners of his mouth looked tight enough to split. Terror, cold and absolute, paralyzed her. She hadn't given him her name. She hadn't even bought a physical ticket. "Oakhaven doesn't exist," she stammered, remembering her geography of the Montana transit lines. "That station was demolished decades ago." "It exists for us," the conductor replied. "It exists for everyone who misses the last ride." The lights failed again. This time, the darkness was accompanied by a chorus of frantic, desperate, whispering voices. They seemed to bleed directly out of the plastic walls and vinyl seats of the train. "Join us. It's so cold outside. Just sit down. Leave your bags. Your seat is waiting." Emma screamed, turning on her heel and sprinting back toward the rear of the train. She threw herself through the heavy metal doors, moving from car 4 to car 5, her sneakers slamming against the floorboards. Car 5 was entirely different. It was lined with heavy wooden compartment doors, all tightly locked. As Emma sprinted past them, frantic fists began to pound on the frosted glass from the inside. Pale, elongated hands pressed against the panes, their fingers stretching into unnatural lengths, leaving smears of dark condensation on the glass. The voices grew louder, shifting and morphing. Suddenly, Emma froze. From behind one of the locked doors, she heard her mother's voice. "Emma, sweetheart, open the door. It's so dark in here," the voice pleaded, dripping with artificial warmth. Emma took a step toward the door, her hand trembling as it reached for the brass handle. But as she looked closer at the frosted glass, she saw the silhouette of the thing inside. Its neck was stretching upward at a grotesque, broken angle, and its jaw was unhinging, mimicking the shape of human speech, without any true humanity behind it. It was a supernatural entity, a predatory force that had swallowed Train 404 whole, and was now using the memories and skins of its ancient victims to hunt her. It wasn't just copying their voices. It was molding itself into their very likenesses to break her mind. She tore herself away from the door and ran. She checked her watch again, but the digital numbers were spinning backward, losing all track of time. Minutes felt like hours. Hours compressed into terrifying seconds of flight. She was trapped in a rolling purgatory, an endless loop of empty cars and screaming shadows. Every time the lights flickered, the entity grew closer, manifesting as a shifting mass of limbs and stolen faces in the aisle behind her. Wearing the flannel shirt, the yellow raincoat, and the conductor's hat all at once. Finally, Emma reached the very last car of the train. The rear wall was a solid emergency exit door with a heavy red lever. Through the glass window, she could see the dark tunnel tracks receding into infinity. The train showed no signs of slowing down. Behind her, the door to the car hissed open. The entity stepped inside, its form stretching to touch the ceiling, a horrific amalgam of 30 years of missing people, all staring at her with hollow, empty eyes. "Time to collect your ticket, Emma," they chorused in a deafening, discordant wail. With a burst of adrenaline born from pure survival instinct, Emma threw her entire body weight against the red emergency lever. The seal broke with a violent hiss of pneumatic pressure. The rushing, freezing mountain air slammed into the car, throwing her off balance. As the entity lunged forward, its elongated fingers scratching the fabric of her jacket, Emma closed her eyes and threw herself out into the roaring blackness of the tunnel. Her body tumbled violently down the gravel embankment, rocks tearing through her jeans and scraping her skin. Pain flared through her shoulder, but she kept rolling until she hit the concrete base of the tunnel wall. Above her, the train roared past, its dark green cars flashing by in a blur of terrifying speed, before disappearing around a bend into the depths of the mountain. Then, silence returned. Emma lay gasping on the gravel, shivering uncontrollably. She looked up. A faint gray morning light was beginning to filter into the mouth of the tunnel just a few hundred yards away. It was sunrise. She had survived. Limping, bleeding, and weeping with relief, Emma dragged herself out of the Blackwood Tunnel and walked for miles. Down the highway until a passing motorist picked her up and drove her back to civilization. By noon, she was back in her apartment. The police had taken her statement with heavy skepticism, chalking it up to a severe panic attack and exposure to the elements after getting lost in the mountains. Emma didn't care what they believed. She locked her apartment door with 3 separate deadbolts, closed all the blinds, and took a long, hot shower to wash away the smell of ozone and damp paper. The nightmare was finally over. She was safe. Calmer now, Emma walked down to the building's lobby to collect her mail, wanting nothing more than to return to a normal routine. Her hands were still bandaged as she unlocked her small metal mailbox. Inside there was only a single crisp piece of cardstock. Emma pulled it out. It was a vintage heavy paper train ticket, completely pristine. Printed across the top in elegant dark green ink were the words, Raven Creek Station to Oakhaven Valley. Below it, the departure date was stamped for tomorrow night, 11:45 p.m., and printed clearly in the center, beneath the bold letters, passenger name, was her own name, spelled perfectly. Beneath her name, written in fresh, wet ink that smeared slightly against her thumb, was a single handwritten line. We kept your seat warm.